Hello, everyone, and welcome again. I'm Jonathan McGuinness, your podcast host. It's been a while since we've been on the air, and really the important thing for me is who can I bring on? What can I do in terms of asking the right questions to see what lights our path forward? No more than from my book with the idea of questions of how to get forward. I love aligning with people who are literally lighting up the path in front of us in both an everyday way and also in a big event or a big community way. I'm very blessed that 2 years ago, I would say slightly over 2 years ago, I just happened to be on Facebook and this picture kept popping up every now and again. God knows why. Whatever the algorithm Facebook had, I kept getting a picture of this guy who I don't know, but I loved his, he'd had drawings on a picture, and I kind of they clicked, and I thought, oh, I'll follow this and I'll keep going back. And they were inspiring me, but on an everyday way. And for those of you who know me, one of the big things that impacted my life was Tony Robbins. In 2001, one of the exercises he gave me in the personal power journey, an exercise was to choose a morning question. So a question that does your RAS, your reticular activating system, that kind of sets your mind focused for a certain way in a day. And Saud kind of gave me a resonance with that type of thinking. And it was like, okay, well, here's a way of thinking about a concept that you may not have thought about for a while, or this might remind you of an understanding that you had. But what was so beautiful about it, it was different. It was visual. So, you didn't know the sound of his voice for months later, etc. But he started sparking off in a way. I'm going to mention something that he said to me just before we got on air. He was a chronic positive influence in my life in a visual way. Some people have chronic problems. He was a chronic positive input. And with that, I'd like to introduce you today, and it's my pleasure and honor, Saud. And I know we've become friends over a couple of years as well. I would say, more than just podcaster to guest. I'm happy to call you about several things. So please, it's my honor today to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Jonathan. First of all, I'm very humbled by the intro, and frankly, I'll tell you, I mean, since we've known each other for over 2 years, it's been, quite a shift in the way I think, in the way I approach problems and solutions, both in life, and I owe a lot of it to the several exchanges we have had, both online and offline. And I couldn't be happier to still be engaging and still having the same level of, probably even more level of curiosity and questions, and and taking on bigger and better things going forward. So I consider you as a co-pilot in my own journey, if I could take the liberty to say so. And yeah, truly honored to be here.
Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to start with, because some people mightn't know you, Saud, and we haven't got to that level of fame yet, either you or me. But for those who would like to get to know you, know more about you, why did you begin? You have a community called Share, Learn, and Grow (SLG). Why did you suddenly appear on my Facebook
Yeah.
profile? There was a journey before I heard about you, so let's know what that is, please.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So, Jonathan, I'm somebody who would be the last person you would be talking to, if it were to, something like that would happen, because this was not something that I had planned. I'm a former banker, former even engineer. I've had multiple paths in my career, and I was living personal growth side, the healing aspect of things. We all go through peaks and troughs in life. So I spent considerable number of years kind of reading books and doing, sort of like self-study. And I was also teaching. I was still a consultant.
Yeah.
I was helping companies on management and restructuring issues, etc. But at the same time, I was teaching in universities. But there was a very common theme, whether I'm dealing with my personal life or with students. And the theme was, where does growth come from? And how do we tap into that growth? Because I think it's the essence of life to grow, to
Yeah.
progress, to find pathways to make that progress. And so because I think we're just, life pushes you to be better in one way or the other. And so when COVID happened, and all of a sudden, I think there was, I think the whole world went through some sort of a trauma or shock. And I was getting pinged by my students, some of my clients even, because they knew that, offline I would have these conversations about personal growth and meaning of life and what to think, how to sort of think about your future, etc. So they said, what are your thoughts on COVID? Like, we're miserable, we're stuck in our homes, and my wife's fighting with me, or the student is like, I just don't know where to go. I've got all this energy and I don't know what to do with it. And so I started just sharing something positive to soothe the pain, if you will.
Yep.
Just play my part in helping people relax a little bit, because the conversations that I was having offline were quite depressing, quite frankly. People would be, they would start a conversation. It's like, yeah, it's kind of tough. And by the time 15, 20 minutes into it, the conversations got quite dark.
Yeah.
That I don't know how long this lasts. And if it lasts, then I don't know how long I can, deal with this. Like, my business is down, and such and such. And so I was like, all right, let's take a step back. Let me just share something positive with you. And then I did it for 2, 3 days, and it was completely unintentional. It was just something because I was getting feedback, and not from hundreds of people, but maybe just from like a half a dozen people
Yeah.
that knew me well. And then I was late one day. So I would typically post this in the morning. So I didn't post it, and some guy messaged me by evening time. Is like, "Where's your post?"
So just out of
I was like,
curiosity, Saud, were your original posts also drawings, or did you speak, or did you write, or was that your initial sort of format, or did it morph over time? I didn't see your original posts,
yeah. So I would be happy to share my original post. It was actually around about COVID. I think it was something to do with, would you prefer 6 feet apart or 6 feet under?
Yeah.
So it was
Okay.
my sort of, provocative post to get the point across. And it was all visual, and graphic in that sense. So I got this guy, messaging me. He's like, "Did you post? I didn't see anything on Facebook. What happened?" And I was like, I'm not, I'm not an influencer. I'm not somebody who does this for a living. Like, what do you mean? Like, I just didn't do it for one day. And he goes like, no, I was actually looking forward to it. And
Brilliant.
I was like, okay. And right then and there, I was like, okay. I got up and I was like, okay, what can I tell him? Like, what in something important, meaningful I can share with him? And I forget what it was, but I put it on a piece of paper, took a photograph like I typically do, and just posted it. And he did a thumbs up right away, and he said, "Hey, thanks. Could you like make sure you kind of, if you don't mind, you share this on a daily basis?" It was literally that simple, and it just started from that. So I just kept doing it daily, and then like a month or 2 months into it, people started messaging me, and they said, "We kind of like your thing. It's but I'm sure you're running out of content." And I was like, "Yeah, I think I should be running out of content. It's been
Yeah.
30 days. Like, how many more insights can I possibly generate?" But lo and behold, Jonathan, we're almost closing onto 1,500 posts now.
Wow, that's
So
fantastic. Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
you got, or I got, my post got to you, let's say, in the early stages, um, or I would say the phase one of SLG, where I was just kind of organizing a WhatsApp group, and just kind of having those more deeper conversations, coaching people a little bit more. So it was getting a bit more intimate that way, and I think that's when you and I connected as well.
Absolutely. Since then, Saud, I've been involved with like, lots of individuals and lots of groups. I'm coming more and more to find that the frequency of daily is so important, because what people then do is they decide this is an important point in my day, whatever it is, whether it's your post or it's like in my said a question as I wake up, or for some coaches they give little pieces every day. And I think, and this is just my thought, and I'm wondering, since you're at the hub of all that sort of feedback, how powerful do you think sort of that daily frequency is relative to, I've also done coaching events where I've flown around the world to do a week in Bali or Vegas or whatever. It's a once off, but then there's a high and there's a low. Whereas this like little nudge of whatever
Mm.
sort on a daily basis, I actually think is far more powerful, but I'd love your thoughts on it.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. Because I think, Jonathan, I look at life as a daily battleground. I know it's a bit of an hyperbolic statement.
Yeah.
People are like, why is life such a battleground? Like, what are you going through on a daily basis? But I think it's maybe we can call it like micro battles.
Yeah.
Like from the time we get up in the morning, how long does it take us to get out of bed? How long does it take for us to kind of be in the zone to have a meaningful conversation with somebody, especially if it's a client? Then being disrupted by 20 million things throughout the day, and then finding your me time, and finding time to get some exercise in, and then also finding time to decompress. So there's just so many things a person has to go through on a 24-hour basis, that I felt like a daily push, a daily reminder, a daily point of reference where you can just go and just ponder something productive. It just it kind of sprinkles into your life. It's got a bit of a compound interest effect. It's like over time it builds up, and over
Absolutely.
time it kind of makes you revisit a lot of these points that I mentioned in different angles. So maybe the first angle didn't connect deeply with somebody, but maybe when I covered the second, third, or fourth time, it's like, aha, I got it. And because I've had those conversations with people, and they said, I know you talk about habits a lot, but that post, which was maybe like post 600 something, is like, it just hit me. And
Yeah.
now I get it, right?
Yeah.
So I may not have connected him on post 35, but on post 600 something, similar topic, same kind of thing, but with a different angle and with a daily reminder cadence. It was a bit of a breakthrough. So I think you gear up to take on life daily. So why not? Why not take something positive and build off of that daily as well?
Absolutely. And, I guess there's people like James Clear who are all into habits. There are other people, I like a guy called Alex Hermosi. He said he wouldn't even plan his day. He plans what his priorities are at the beginning of the day. So there's no structure, just priority. So the combination of the two of them and this daily frequency, I think what you're doing is very powerful. So you started that, and then what happened? It stopped being just a post, and it started being more. What happened in that expansion phase of more than you just posting?
Yeah, that's interesting because, Jonathan, in the beginning, with this gentleman who nudged me to do the daily post, there was another gentleman who stepped in, a completely different individual, and he comes and he goes like, "Do you mind if we can maybe do a WhatsApp group? Because I don't particularly, tap into Facebook or Instagram." And I was like, I'm like, look, who would care about this stuff? Maybe there's 5, 6 people. Why not? It was just an experiment, and at that stage, especially, I couldn't say no to anybody. I was just
Sure.
like, if somebody wants a little bit of positivity, hey, I'm all for it. I'm a bit more discerning now because there's a practical limitations to what I can do and what I can't, but we can get into that later. But look, I told them, I said, sure, let's create a WhatsApp group. My son, I think he was like 12 at that time. Oh no, yeah, not 12. Yeah, maybe 12, 13. And I told him, I said, you be the admin, set this group up, and let's call it something like Share, Learn, and Grow,
Yeah.
and, we can just give it more structure. And I kid you not, Jonathan, I thought it was going to be, like I said, 6, 7, maybe 8 people tops, you know,
Yep.
because most of them are getting this stuff on Facebook or Instagram anyway. Like, why would they care? And it just started building. Like, there were people coming, is like, do you mind if I bring my dad into this group? I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? Somebody would say, My friend, he's really feeling lost. I think this could help him. Do you mind sending the link for this group? I was like, absolutely. And next thing I know, there are like 30 people in the group, and I'm like, hold on a second, what's going on? And it's because then you're having meaningful conversations, but mostly with strangers now.
Yeah.
So initially, these are like 6, 7 people that I know, and then all of a sudden, it's like 24 others which I have never met in my life. So for me, it was such an interesting social experiment that now I'm getting pushed out of my comfort zone, and I'm thinking, what have I taken on? Like, I mean, I don't know these people, and I don't know what they expect. And then a bunch of people left because they were like, okay, we get it, and maybe my content wasn't good enough or what have you, or for whatever reason, a lot of people left and new people came in, and it just started snowballing. And then people who are like athletes to bankers to teachers to philosophers to artists. I mean, you just have such a diverse group of individuals, kids, teenagers who join this group. Because when they met me offline, I told them that SLG is a family. This is not, we're not going to tolerate adult content here. It's about sharing something positive on a daily basis, which I should be comfortable sharing with my son or in front of my parents. So I deliberately said such that it's open door, but a lot of people would not necessarily like it because it's too PG, right?
Gotcha.
So it was kind of like this toss up between, hey, you've opened the doors. Do you want everybody to come in? And the answer is, well, everybody's welcome, but based on certain rules, right? You don't just allow everybody to show up in your home. So same way, I was careful with that. But then it just kind of snowballed into something where I felt responsible as the admin that I have to kind of help develop this community somehow. But even then, I was very reluctant at that time. I was like, 30 is just too many. It's just because if it's a couple of hours out of my day responding to questions offline, like I'm not getting paid for this. Like, what am I doing? I've got full-time jobs. I was doing a couple of other things at that time. So yeah, it went from hey, it's not a bad idea to hey, what's going on? And then I'm like, okay, I got to build a community. Again, it was one of those things that I had no plans for, and it was happening organically as people were demanding it.
And what's it sort of like? I know it because I interact with it. That was one channel at that time with 30 people. Where is it at now, Saud? Well, how did it evolve to? And explain what now is, maybe as well.
Yeah, sure. So we just had just one channel called the SLG channel, and then people said, out of those 30, some would say, why don't we do something, adventurous together, like go for a hike? Because, I was all about living a healthy lifestyle as well. And then we can discuss more of that offline. Otherwise, we'll clutter that channel. So we said, okay, make an SLG adventure group. And then we're like, okay, what else? Well, we also want to talk business, right? We want to figure out how we can come up and look at opportunities we can collaborate on, find some synergies. Okay, then create an SLG enterprise group. And then there was, okay, what about health? We want to talk about health, specifically about weight loss and this and that. So we created SLG Health. So we started having these offshoots pop up based on demand. And while this was all happening, there were more and more people joining, and it went from, now it's at around, I think around 250 in the main group, and around 80, 90 in all these subgroups. So maybe we're touching close to 500 people, or 500, you can call it, memberships in these WhatsApp groups. And these are free memberships across all groups. And it's kind of interesting that there are some people who are in the main group and in every single group. There are some people who are only in one group.
Sure.
And there's some people who are not even in the main group, but they're, let's say, in the SLG Health group or the SLG Enterprise group only, because that's what resonates with them the most. So you're starting to see this community picking and choosing, but at the same time, they're kind of thinking, if I'm if I'm taking in the daily post and this daily motivation, inspiration, insight, what have you, well, it should be helping me with other aspects of my life, like health
Sure.
and business. So I should be in other groups within SLG as well. Um, so
And,
it's more
and
again,
then there's another element, a complete other element to it as well, Ted, which until a couple of months ago, I didn't get to participate because I'm not located. But in Riyadh, I got to meet with Rania and her husband, and in Dubai, I got to meet with Sharuk. So
yeah,
people from the group who I enjoyed chatting with, I actually ended up meeting in different parts of the world. So I know
yeah,
from all the photos that there's a huge offline weekend mentality around this as well,
right,
and maybe social
right.
interaction. Maybe you could explain, because it's weird. A lot of people think things are going online, but you sort of combined or merged both worlds. It very much has an offline aspect as well, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And actually, this is something, if you don't mind, if I can maybe give some context to this part, the offline part. I mean, I think, and I realized this, there was a time, I would say several months back, where maybe the online part was so heavily skewed and so saturated that we weren't getting to see each other enough offline,
Yeah.
in person, face to face. And I think part of any community, I know we live in a virtual world and all of that, but I think the human interaction, physical human interaction, spending even time 30 minutes over coffee, I think it's magical. I mean, the screens just cannot do it justice. So I've been a big proponent of trying to do more, offlines or in persons, let's say, or meetups. And you've had that in Riyadh and in Dubai in your travels.
Yeah.
We tried our best to get you into Pakistan somehow for a few adventure trips, but next year for sure.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I think the idea really is that let's give our thumbs a rest and let's start talking to people, look them in the eye, just have a real meaningful human interaction experience. Because I've seen people shift um, beyond theory and words when they actually verbalize, in person.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
it's just so powerful. Like I believe I take it upon myself that as an admin, I kind of discounted that for a few years of SLG. I mean, I did say let's do meetups, but not like what I'm doing now. Like now I'm pushing the community together. And also we're working with a fantastic community called the Garage. There's a friend of mine, Nader. He has turned his car garage into this beautiful place where the community comes in and does arts and crafts and yoga and dancing and singing and music and trainings and kids are painting. And I mean, it's just like, people, let's meet other people, let's get together. And you see this with the kids, especially because the parents are complaining these kids are losing social skills sitting behind the computer all day. When you force people into fun activities together, it just creates a completely different dynamic, which is really the purpose of SLG, which is to foster this tribe, if you will, that
Well, the
supports.
thing I like about one, I'll say about kids is one of my sons has joined as well, and I think
Yes,
he likes the fact, but that community is there's almost if there's a possibility I could meet you somewhere, I will,
yeah,
and in essence, there are several hundred people who've probably met now because you started
right.
posting something. And with every relationship, there's probably even, people who've become friends. There might even be
Oh,
couples in the mix, who knows? But, once you bring people together, there could be a baby that exists in the future because Saud put up a picture. I think our ideas have life and they produce more life. So I just think I'll commend you on that.
oh, thank you. No, that's beautifully said. Actually, it's interesting you said that because this weekend, so today is Thursday, so there's a plan this weekend, and I can't make it because I've got a prior commitment. But so there are 6 people who've never met each other till a year ago. They don't
Yeah.
know each other from Adam, right? And I've known all 6 of them through one person or the other. and they've all kind of come together. And so this weekend they're all going for an offsite kind of thing, like up in the hills, like a resort.
Lovely.
And they've got this fantastic day planned. And I kind of sometimes act like a dad. I'm like, okay, you guys take care of yourself. Just be responsible and blah blah blah. And they were laughing at it, and they're like, look, man, we don't need you. Just let us be. Let us have a good time. And I love that because I want people to really connect. They should not be dependent on the admin of the group to
Sure.
to be there and, like, hosting all these events. And no, it's your connections, your authentic vibe as it resonates with the other person. And I'm not gonna name names, but there's some people who I know need this with a capital N. They need that human connection because, Jonathan, I mean, as you know, loneliness is an epidemic, and it's something that is I mean, I kind of look at it as it's just a very it's a cancer for the society, and people don't talk about it, which makes it even worse. And now I know these people, they're out there and they're saying, well, you kind of twisted my arm to go to this little SLG meetup, and I kind of spent about 3-4 hours there. Yeah, it wasn't bad. And 2 weeks later, they're like, yeah, I kind of met that person again. I met there, and it was good. And then 2-3 months later, they're like, oh yeah, we're planning this trip together, and we're going hiking and blah blah blah. And I'm like, this person is just magically transformed. What happened to him? What happened to him was an authentic human connection. That's what happened to him. And you cannot achieve that authentic connection till you don't put people in places. Um,
Absolutely.
and I
Absolutely.
think that's what's so beautiful about it.
Well, like in essence, you're talking about something COVID contracted. It made loneliness probably even a bigger
Yeah,
element for many people than it ever did before, even because of the way things were run. Friends weren't friends anymore, family members weren't family members anymore, either for separation or disagreement about how things should be done or not done. It created a lot of divides, and sometimes and here's my definition of friendship, Saud, or I don't know if it's a definition, but an idea about it. I'm very happy if I haven't met somebody who I've built a friendship with, maybe in 5 years, but I'll sit down with them like it was yesterday. For me,
mm,
time is not a huge factor in it. I feel the connection, and then the connection is there. For some
yeah,
people, friendship is they prefer to meet on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. And no definition is right. But for me, it's about resonance. And when you have conversations with people, you find out whether you're aligned with how they
mm,
think, their values, their traits, and whatever. And somehow I feel that's almost a more genuine friendship than the one you just were born into, or you're there because of proximity. And I'm not saying
yeah.
there's anything wrong with them, but there's something almost special about ones of alignment. And I think that's what you've given people to try or not try it. Some people left, as you said, but many
Yeah.
people have developed stronger and stronger relationships of that nature.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this is very interesting you mentioned this, Jonathan. I mean, you've been one of the top contributors to building this beautiful family, this community, which, again, as you know, I've always said this is an experiment, guys. I have no blueprint on
Still
what
in
success.
alpha.
Still an alpha, yeah, it's perpetually. And and it's like, but the fact that people have developed a strong, some people have developed such a strong bond with SLG, you wouldn't believe. I mean, at the conversations I've had offline, I had this one lady, she goes like, well, it wasn't even about me. The funny thing was about you, because she said, well,
Okay.
if you were to change this format and Jonathan doesn't get to share, the nuggets of wisdom every now and then, like, that's not fair. That's just not fair. And she was, half kidding, but at the same time, she was like, you don't understand what some of these generous souls in SLG have done for me. Like, this is what the basically the crux of what she was saying, because she couldn't find that resonance with anybody in her family, at work, or within friends. Because to be able to create that space, like you famously say, I've heard you say this so many times, and every time we discuss space, we talk about you, that we create this space where people are allowed to share their thoughts without judgment. They're allowed to discover their pathways out of wherever they are towards their desired state. And, you know, that's such a gift. It's a blessing for so many because they're not allowed anywhere else.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and when they see you respond to any of their questions and the level of sincerity and the generosity you exhibit in providing the details and connecting it to your life, and then the accountability, the self-accountability that you bring to the table, I think it makes people wonders like, I wish the world was like this, and they're not going to get this anywhere. But some people will not get it. For some people, it's too much. So for some, they'll be like, look, I'm just in for the quotes. I don't need to deep dive into anything. I don't have time. And frankly, a lot of people just don't have time.
Well, then
Just
you also I don't agree with that sentence. I'm going to pull you on that with it. It's
okay.
not a priority. I just can't
It's
let
not
you
a
away
priority.
with it. But you did also create deep dive then to
Yes.
allow sort of, people who do want to have a full on intellectual philosophical debate. They can go there and sort of hammer it out. Which I've been in a couple of those battles, we call it.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
so now that you've got like it into, there's a dynamic, different sets of communities within the community, and there's probably even communities that are offshoots that you have no involvement with whatsoever, groups and spawned and everything else. Where do you see it going? Or if you had a choice around, where it might go, or maybe even not about SLG, what do you think is good for communities? So, because like in a way that's what you created.
Mm.
Like in essence, like I'll give a couple of ideas. One is we have Dunbar's number. So like
Yes.
we're ever going to really know 150 people, really, even though we might have loads more friends on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever else, to get intimate at the level that we talk of a relationship that has that sort of gravity of meaning. And kind of you're bringing a lot more of that together, but it's kind of spawning out into sub communities, and it's offline and it's online. What do you think the possibilities are for a community of this nature? Maybe just let's look at it from that perspective.
Oh yeah, phenomenal. I genuinely think, Jonathan, that to really think about SLG's evolution, I have to sort of step back to why I started this all, right? Because I think I have to sort of go back to the DNA to kind of predict the future in a way.
For sure.
And DNA for SLG was really hope, right? Because if you want to heal, you need to go to hope. If you want to grow your business, or you want to, get fitter, healthier, what have you, work on your relationship, it has to be this conviction that tomorrow is going to be better than today, which
Sure.
is essentially hope. It's this optimistic predisposition that one has to have. And you've always got to put that out there. I'm not talking about fantasy. I'm not talking about false hope. I'm talking about real, practical hope, where you can set goals, you can have pathways. It's a theory, right? You've got a goal, you've got multiple pathways to that goal, and then you believe you have agency, and then you act, right? So there's no point in hope if you're not going to act, right? It doesn't, hope alone doesn't get you where you need to be. But if you want to really nurture hope, it has to come through action. It
So
has
let
to come clarity.
Can I ask you a question? And this can be a difficult question for some people, or they're in a difficult situation if they have to ask this question I'm about
Yeah.
to ask you. There are people who've resigned to not having hope anymore.
Yeah.
And maybe I could ask you, what's your idea of a bridge from that space of no hope to a glimmer of hope? And in a way, this community has become that for some people. But what do you see as the bridge? And maybe there's not just one bridge, there could be
Yeah.
multiple bridges, but people join and they feel, some people want to feel listened to and validated, and then hope comes because they feel that. Other people want to feel challenged and more capable, and then they build hope. We all have different modalities where we do that.
Yeah.
Since you've had like experience in that area, and I think when we were in that contracted period of COVID, a lot of people lost hope. And now when I feel the energy of the community that you have, that energy is representative of that glimmer has become a shining light, a beacon for something. And it might be relatively small now, but it's growing. Its luminosity is getting brighter and brighter. What is it that is it just an idea? Like you had an idea, I'll do this, and then humans are inspired to have ideas that will make things expand, or I don't know. I'd love to know
Yeah.
your thoughts on it, you know?
No, it's a fantastic question. I mean, first of all, I think, true hope is infectious. It has virality. It has the ability to infect others, and they have the ability to infect others. And has an exponential curve that it can take on. And I think that, when I talk to certain people now who really didn't, I wouldn't even call them hopeless, but they were exhibiting this level of ambivalence or even apathy at times.
Yeah,
And I had to kind of challenge them. Like for instance, you would challenge me if you think something is phrased differently or is not phrased properly, what have you. And I always appreciate that. So if somebody would say something in a certain tone or not respond in a certain way, I would challenge them.
sure.
So in a conversation, everything is going fine, and they would say something which would be like, it's like a glaring limiting belief. Well, after 40, men don't do this or what have you, like something like that. Like men don't climb mountains or whatever, right? Or don't
Sure.
run marathons. And I was like, why? Like, I just want to ask you, why would you think that? And I think what you'll see is that a lot of people are projecting, right, off their limiting beliefs. And they're making these statements which almost sound like facts, and they're not. So when you ask them a question to back it up, it just kind of like makes them very uncomfortable, because in their logical mind, it's like, well, what I'm about to say doesn't really hold water, but I'm just saying it anyways. And then they feel like, okay, I'm going to expose myself if I keep talking like this. But
Sure.
then immediately after this question, you empathize very productively. You don't pity anybody. Or you don't like patronize them. You empathize. It's like, is that how you were thinking about, or is that, kind of give them an out a little bit. So they're able to then speak into that space and say, it's like, I take 2 steps, they take 2 steps, then I take 2 steps. We keep getting closer from that point of disagreement. And pretty soon they realize that whatever they were saying was out of fear, right? And they were allowing the fear to override their hope, whether it is, I don't have enough activation energy to pursue this project, or even if I try, I know others have tried and they've failed, so I will fail as well, or I'll do my best, but you know how it is, I don't control everything. And so they will always have this exit plan,
Yeah,
in the conversation. And I would ensure that I would keep challenging them at every point till I break it down. And I've done this so many times. I've pissed people off as well, because it's almost like why do you care?
but
Why do you care?
isn't pissed off a moment on comfort and then change? So it's actually sometimes a good thing for somebody to be
Yeah.
pissed off. It like they need the frustration, or that energy that scrapes away the lies from or the
Yeah.
pretense they have, or the fear they have, just to be vulnerable and say, oh yeah, okay, this is what I really feel.
Oh, it's exactly that. I mean, in my experience, at least 100% of the time, it's been that. It's like venting. They're just to kind of blow some steam, and most of the conversation they're having with themselves, really.
Yeah,
It's like, well, I can't do this because of this, but okay, maybe I can try something, but not tomorrow, because tomorrow I've got meetings or whatever. I'll think about it next week. Like, they're, and as they're talking, they're also realizing that I'm not judging them, and I'm with them in that process. Now, I'm not a trained psychologist, therapist, what have you. Like, I have no idea. I've done some certifications in transformation coaching and life coaching and stuff like that, but I mean, and that stuff is helpful. I'm not saying it's not helpful, but 99.9% of what I know is dealing with humans in all sorts of conditions, especially in and through adversity, and getting them out of it as well. And what I've seen is that when people genuinely believe that this hope is the right fuel for us, they latch onto it. And then something happens to their identity, Jonathan, which I've seen it happen. I don't know if you heard of this thing where this kid got he took the SATs and he ended up getting like 1480 out of 1600 or something like that.
Yeah.
And his mom said, like, are you sure you got this? Did you cheat? And he goes like, no, I didn't. And then he went ahead and he kind of lived a very successful few years. And then he gets a message a few years down the line, or I don't know, a few months, whatever, that, oh, sorry, we made a mistake in your grade. You actually got 700, not 14 something. And so the difference was not the score. The difference was that he was living like he got the score. Yeah. His identity was reflecting the accidental score that he got. So sometimes when you have these conversations and people say, I am more than I'm being right now, my current state is a fraction of what I could be doing. And that is a fraction of what my potential is. That rude awakening sometimes pisses people off, shocks them into this sort of sleepless nights, 2-3 sleepless nights. It's very common. And then you start seeing action play out. What for example, what have we seen in the SLG Health Group? You're one of the leaders in the physical transformation side.
Yeah.
The amount of weight you've lost and all the other markers that you're following, and you're one of those people who's given people who are, let me put it this way, you have given them the permission and also taken away the excuses to go and live a better life. Right? It's that thing that makes such a difference, because it all of a sudden, and you don't know, there's like 6 other people in the group that you don't talk to, that I talk to, and they tell us, is like, wow, it's so impressive what Jonathan has done. He's broken through this plateau. They're following you, very secretively, on a weekly basis. And there are others in the group like Zulfikar and myself, and there's so many others, that we've all lost weight, we've gotten healthier and injury-free, all of this stuff, and the stuff that the community has helped itself. And that, in addition, gives people a lot of hope, that I'm around hopeful people who are practical at getting stuff done. If it comes to losing weight, they're losing weight. If it comes to starting a business, they're starting business, they're interacting, so they can see real progress, real pathways being explored by real people with real struggles, and of all walks of life. Jonathan and Saud are not like 17-year-old kids.
No,
just running around.
I wish.
We've got families. We have to so we have to keep the kingdom intact, right?
For sure.
And so I think that's my point there, is that people who may have ambivalence or apathy, even they see this playing out in front of them, and it's beyond just motivation, and it's beyond even just a spark. It's like, okay, there is a roadmap. This can be done, And when you talk to a Jonathan or a Saud or Zulfikar or whoever, they make it sound so simple. It's not that complicated, and that's what's so fun about it. It's actually not that complicated. It's just a little bit of mindfulness, a bit of discipline, a bit of accountability, and then just do 2-3 of these things, and all of a sudden your calcified state starts shaking all the rust off, and then you feeling good about yourself. And I think 100 out of 100, I would say, tell me they're feeling younger.
Excellent.
They're just feeling younger being part of SLG, which is a very interesting takeaway, because it tells me that hope keeps you young. And if you think about it,
for sure. Well, if you don't have hope, you're contracting, and the ultimate contraction is death, unfortunately. Yes. And we want to postpone that as long as possible. Yes. I have another thought, Saud, is like we talked about a little bit, someone in apathetic or ambivalent way. We won't call it hopelessness, but you know, in a difficult position. And then we talk about hope and maybe what that bridge is. I've had one idea for a long time, and I don't claim the idea, but I sort of took it from personal development years and years ago. A belief that when I mightn't even see a solution, that having a belief, even though it might be an illusion, is there's always a way. Now, there mightn't be a way, but just looking at the world, even without hope or knowledge that there is one, keeps your brain focused on looking for one, and it increases the probability. So you're still in that sort of ambivalent state, but
Yeah.
you've decided to believe what I call a useful illusion. And even when you don't see the answers, you go, there's always a way, because we don't always see everything in future, even the most positive people in the world. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
I find that a useful belief. And even if I die in that belief, I was attempting to go forward, even if I wasn't actually moving.
Yes.
Have you used or seen or sort of felt feedback of people using ideas like that to try and bridge this ambivalence with this sort of more hopeful energy?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like that, driving at night concept, right? Where your lights can only help you see 20 feet, 30 feet in front of you, but you don't stop driving because of that. That
Yeah.
you can only go 20, 30 feet. So it's just 20, 30 feet at a time. And so when you talk to somebody who's like, I'm not so sure. So my point is just, you know, take a leap of faith. What do you
So,
got to lose?
so the,
It's a little bit of,
I love that. I'm going to remember that. That's like the belief is the headlights, which might only be 30, 40 meters or whatever it is,
absolutely,
you know?
absolutely.
Fantastic. So
Because
I'm
it,
not, oh yeah, go ahead.
yeah, sorry.
No, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say because it takes all the pressure off of the person who's stuck in inertia. Because I know what's going to come out of it. It's like I can't do this because of all these reasons. And as I always say, all excuses are justifiable, all of them, because they're all are right at some level. So I'm
Great.
not going to sit here and argue with you over if this is right or wrong. Like I'm just going to say everything you're saying is absolutely right. But you have to make the call, is what you're doing, is it worth it? So you can have all the reasons not to do something. And if you have one reason to do it and it's worth it, would you do it? And knowingly that it's only 20, 30 feet in front of you. That's it. No more than that. Are you still willing to take that leap of faith? Because what happens is that it's this illusion that this is a huge mountain you have to climb in one step. No, you don't. Every mountain you're going to climb is still one step at a time, no matter how tall it is. And that one step at a time mindset gets people out of the quicksand of apathy or ambivalence, and then they start feeling younger. They start feeling more curious about life. And I'll be honest with you, like who doesn't like to like a little praise here and there? When they start getting compliments from others,
For
it just
sure.
starts feeding. It's just feeding on them, and in a good way, not in a narcissistic way, but in a good way. That, man, I kind of lost that zing that I used to have in life when I was younger, and I assumed for whatever reason that your life's over at 40, or 30 for some people. Um, and it's kind of challenging everybody. It's like, hey, man, I mean, age is what you decided to be. I know a lot of older people who talk like kids at time, and it's so much fun. And part of the fact that they have such a good health span and lifespan is this childlike curiosity and hopefulness and energy that hope brings about. It's so authentic, and when they connect, they end up connecting multi-generationally. So they're not just talking to their kids, but their kids,
Absolutely.
right? Great grandparents. And the reason why they are able to live this long is because I believe that because of meaningful social connections, which are really fueled by authentic hope, nurturing others, and not having a trade in mind, not looking for some sort of a transaction. It's like, I'm doing it because this is what my soul feels good from, giving and sharing the knowledge I have, etc. And then people reciprocate, and some will disappoint for sure. Some will, I always say, keep your expectations low to minus, but some people will become your 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 pillars when you least expect them. And it's happened to me a few times in the last few years.
There's one area that I'd like to zone back in on, even though you
Yeah.
mentioned it, is like you mentioned energy a couple of times. And really, you know, the most basic way I see of creating energy is to take care of your health, whether that means make sure you're sleeping well, make sure you're eating well, make sure you're doing mobility and exercise of some sort. And
Yeah.
and from that energy that you can develop even without anybody else. Obviously, support is lovely and guidance is lovely. You have the energy to take action in all of the other areas. How fundamental do you find that people who sort of give that priority to their health on a daily basis in whatever way, whether that's their sleep, their diet, or their exercise, changes all of the other aspects, whether that's their relationships, their finance, just their joy of life, we could say. How does that play in within the group? Because I'm also looking one at you, Saud, because you come up with a lot of ideas from outside the group, from your experience, your life, but then you also get a lot of intense feedback because you're the center of a hub of X hundred number of people. So you see those changes. You could nearly make a chart on them. What role does health play in that for them?
Jonathan, I would not be exaggerating if I say it's number one. It's by far number one in my mind, because when I see people consume differently, they are created differently. That's what I have found in the last 4 years. And consumption is not just the food, but it's also the thoughts, the inputs, which, you know, what you're scrolling or not scrolling online, the company you keep, right? And it's just when the inputs change, the output starts changing automatically. And it is like I've seen this with somebody. I told them, I said, look, why don't you start walking, because they were having a hard time doing high intensity interval training, for example. And I said, you don't
Fair
have to
enough.
do any of that. You know, you've got sneakers, walk, right? Um, Go one direction, 10 minutes, which means it's a 20-minute walk on the way back, right? So that's it. Okay, that's too good to be true. I'm like, no, no, no. I'm telling you, it's not too good to be true. Just again, it was going back to that car headlight reference. You know, just one step at a time. Just look at what I'm asking you to do. Trust me a little bit and see what happens. And they did it. And the first reaction I got, and this was an interesting one, was actually negative. They came back and they said that I'm a little upset with myself that I was arguing with you over just a 20-minute walk. That was so interesting for me,
Yeah.
because all of a sudden there was something about self-respect that just kind of woke up inside.
There
There's
was an
like,
activation of some sort.
yes, yes, and that wasn't really my intent. I just was asking them to go because they'll feel good about it. You know, after dinner, they get to digest the food, whatever. You know, it just helps them lighten up a little bit. And here they're like, you know, like, I don't, and the person is basically telling me, is like, you know, how low could you get if you're arguing with somebody over a 20-minute walk? I'm so like, I don't like this and blah blah. And then obviously we carried that negativity into, you know, and we channeled it differently in the end. But I love that person's response, because something woke up in them, something that was dead or was dying, you know, something they had maybe a decade plus ago, that just kind of, and this is something that I heard, what's it called? Jim Quick. He said that, if you're gonna, if I remember this right, if you're gonna fight for your limitations, you get to keep them.
For sure.
Right? So if you're going to keep arguing for why you can't do something, I can't, it was like, well, you get to be limited. You stay as is. So don't complain now, because now you asked for it, and you've literally fought for it. So if you're your own worst enemy, then don't blame the world, right? And then I think that's that's part of the catalyst for change is when you physically try to shift things around, whether it's your activity, whether it's your food. And, in health, I always look at mental health as primary, and what you're allowing into your head. How are you taking criticism in? Because some people take criticism in, and it's like a heavy anchor, and it just immobilizes them. And I always kind of look at it as you pick and choose the parts that you can use as fuel, right? And don't take it as an anchor or chains. So it's your consumption that will create you differently. And I think health is the starting point for that, because that will unlock the right energy at the right time. It will also make you realize that your energy is not endless. So you cannot waste it. You cannot waste it on negative stuff. You cannot waste it with people that don't serve you, frankly. They just don't. There are some people who are gonna kind of bring you down. But once you realize the good energy, then you will try to avoid the bad energy from contaminating the good energy.
So you really bring up what I consider a very important topic, and that's conflict. And the reason why I say conflict, in order to, how would say, curate your inputs, whether they're mental or physical, i.e. what you listen to, who you have in your company, what you eat, what you do. It potentially means saying no. No, it absolutely means saying no. And that might mean saying no to yourself, first of all, and then no to people, strangers sometimes, which might be easier, and very close people, which are family, because there are expectations around doing things, but your health may clash. There's a conflict of interest with you taking care of yourself. So the changing people's sort of attitude towards conflict, and I don't mean conflict fighting, obviously, you know what I mean. I mean healthy boundaries. I mean changing people that sometimes it's okay not to be liked, or not to be validated, or not to be feeling good because of your interaction with someone, but the long-term benefit for that short-term pain is really worth it,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think no is one of the most powerful tools or chisels to sculpting your best life. If you can say no to a lot of things, it's kind of like Michelangelo's David, the sculpture, right? Because I think when the Pope asked him, was like, how did you make the sculpture? And Michelangelo said something to the effect that I just took out everything that wasn't David. So it's that taking out everything that doesn't serve you reveals this masterpiece. That is you. So it's this realizing that no is really where the power sits, because lots of no's is a hell yes to something.
For sure.
It will take you to that point, because when you ask somebody who's like, what do you want to do in life? And they're like, I don't know. Okay, good. So let's start with the trial and error. Let's start poking around. Let's start provoking your thought. Let's see what works for you, what doesn't. But that takes energy. That takes effort. Why would we do that, right? So it's no is a very authentic way to conserve your energy.
Sure.
It's saying,
on
I'm
that
not going to
topic,
do this, which means I will reallocate somewhere else. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, I think on that topic, you say, well, what does someone want to do? Because this has happened in our household recently,
Yeah.
is that's can be very difficult, because if I think of a full circle, it's 360 degrees, and you're asking to someone to pick out a particular degree and go that direction. And sometimes it's easier to say, well, what would you definitely not do? Because what that does is it reduces some of the things that you wouldn't do,
Right.
leaving it makes that you're zoning in on what you could do or what you'd be
Right.
comfortable doing. It just
Right.
reduces the size of the problem
Absolutely.
by saying, well, what would you not do? And then you go, well, it's not as big as a problem, even though there's still a million options. Just mentally,
Yes.
there's that, oh, I wouldn't do this, or this, so
Right.
it has to be something else. And the feeling of that reduction in the size of the problem can be so helpful,
Oh, yes. Oh yes, it's a filter. No is a filter. It can be a boundary at times too, but it definitely subdivides the problem or narrows the vision. It can, or maybe refines it, or makes your goal more high definition. I guess that's another way of looking at it.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
would like, so in a way, like people are part of this group, they get the leverage of your ideas and guidance and nudges this way, that way, with both the posts and the conversations, because they can be just as intense sometimes out in terms of nudging and pushing and pulling and everything else. Where do you where do you see this potentially going next? And maybe then also, where could people get involved in the group, in what sort of ways, offline or online? What's the best way to get in contact with you about SLG?
Oh, sure, sure, absolutely. They can more than happy to connect with me on my Instagram at Saud Masud. So at Saud Masud, SAUD MASUD. And then I can share the link for the WhatsApp group if they want to have a more intimate setting. So I'm available on Facebook, same handle. In terms of where we go from here, Jonathan, this year was quite an interesting year because we are about 4 months from 4 years to when we started SLG. So we are right about at 4 months mark, 4 years mark, sorry. And I really spent a lot of time in the first half of the year just thinking, like, what's next? What's next? What's next? And when you're talking about no's, I was thinking about what can I say no to? Like, have I done my part? Is that something that where it stops? I've kind of shared enough knowledge, whatever I could assimilate. Obviously, I'm pulling in from books and mentors from thousands of years ago. So am I done that way? And the interesting reaction, and I know you and I spoke offline about this, and I spoke to a couple of other confidants, people that I generally respect, like yourself, and just want to get their opinion. And the reaction was for some of them was quite emotional. It's like, no, no, no. What do you mean you want to like fold this thing? Like, we're just getting started. What are you talking about? And I was like, okay, well, why do you believe that? It's like, well, because there's so much more to be done. And I thought about it, and I'm going like, hold on a second. Does the world need more hope? It's like, yes. Okay, so then I guess my job is never going to be over then. Then I have to commit to this. But so going forward, if I'm going to do this, I want to do this with more structure, with more scale, with more partnerships, with more leverage, and beyond the WhatsApp group and just the Instagram posts, right? So I want to be able to. I'm already talking to several organizations where we'll be working with taking the wellness aspects of what we have discovered and developed, and design them into a employee wellness program, take them into schools, for instance, help people transform their lives, do life coaching, transformation coaching, teamed up with certain doctors and certain healthcare companies, help people avoid the avoidable diseases, the lifestyle diseases. They're causing 80% of deaths worldwide. So the goal is to really take SLG and put it into action at a more organized way, with members from the community, with institutions, with corporates, with healthcare providers, because at the end of the day, I can help design and I can cultivate it, but the scale is going to come from these stakeholders in the community just running with it. They'll just say, we want to make sure that, let's say a company says, I want to make sure that all my employees are healthy, they're getting a solid wellness program, and they understand the value of good health, which is priority number one, and career planning, just kind of taking a little bit of control and ownership of your life, frankly. And it's not that they can't, they just haven't been prioritized. It's just not been prioritized. So talking to the CEOs and the leaders of these companies, and not everybody's going to do it because they always talk about, you know, I'm kind of getting along, I'm getting my numbers, so why do I really need to spend on a wellness program, right? Not realizing that this is a long-term bet, that a healthy employee is a happy employee, is a productive employee, and you win big time long-term. But a lot of companies are very short-term, very myopic in their view. So again, I would be saying no to a lot of them to focus on the ones that really understand the need for wellness in their communities, sub-communities, organizations, etc. And I'm also going to be taking, like I said, communities. One of the communities I was talking to you about was Garage, where we're seeing people from all walks of life come in. And look, they're having a blast listening to music, but at the same time, they're real human beings who need to decompress. They want to talk about mental health issues. So they want to have the tools for stress management, anger management, conflict resolution, being able to communicate better, being able to plan their lives better, have more discipline, have more focus. So they want a place where we can help guide them. And all this knowledge, institutional knowledge, is sitting in SLG for the last 4 years. So I'm going to take all of that and take it out into programs in the communities and corporates. But also, I plan to launch a book in the first half, most likely closer to June, May or June, where I will focus on the first pillar of, in my opinion, of what wellness and hope is all about, which is health, which we just talked about.
Fantastic.
So that's the goal in terms of a bit of a roadmap.
So it sounds like you're shifting maybe from alpha into beta, and 2024
Finally.
is going to be an exciting year, Saud.
Finally, and I have to say, of the people that I need to thank, you're on the top of the list, my man. You've been pushing me, provoking me, asking me tough questions on when it's going to happen. I've been talking about the book all year, and I'm glad I went through this journey, because now where I am, I believe it's gonna the book that's going to come out, and we will discuss this offline as well in more detail, is really going to be in line with the roadmap over the next few years. Because, like I said, either I do something or I don't do it, right? I'm not going to do it in the middle.
Sure.
And I think from that perspective, it's important that we are aligned, and the products and the services and the offerings are all aligned. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, I'd like to say, Saud, thank you very much. We didn't actually know how long this would take, but I think we went thoroughly through everything that you've done, you're doing, and now the new plans for growth in the future. Delighted to have you on board, and I look forward to maybe post your book or post some communities developing new later on in 2024 to come back and see how it's going.
Oh, I would love to. It's been such a pleasure, Jonathan, as always. And every time I have a conversation with you, there's one thing I always get is clarity. I don't know it's how you pose questions and how you kind of carry this, but there's a reinforcement and there's a refinement that takes place. So I really want to thank you for that. It's really an art. I wish I could do it as well as you do, but I really appreciate this. And you've been honestly, I would say that you've been a foundational member for our community. People know you just as much as they know me. And doing this remotely, sitting outside of Pakistan, and being such a valuable member of the community, that shows you that that quality can't be held back. If it's there, it's there. So we on behalf of the entire community, I want to thank you for everything, and also a lot of fun and exciting stuff you're going to be doing together.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to it, and I look forward to that day in Pakistan, hopefully in 2024. So,
absolutely.
thank you very much, Saud.
Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it.